Life is a song. And what if your faith could help you hit the high notes? Grammy-nominated and Dove Award-winning artist Torrin Wells invites you into The High Note.
It's The High Note.
A podcast about real life, real struggles, and a real God who meets you right where you are. With honesty, insight, and encouragement, Torrin tackles the issues you're facing every day and helps you rise above the noise. If you're ready for a fresh perspective on your faith, tune in to The High Note podcast with Torrin Wells.
Welcome to The High Note.
Available now wherever you get your podcasts.
Each week on Culinary Confidential, Christina Cates, a seasoned foodie who has worked at some of New York City's top restaurants, will share her passion for the culinary world. Whether you're a professional chef, a restaurant enthusiast, or a lover of good food, Christina dives into the heart of hospitality, exploring the trends, triumphs, and challenges facing the food service profession. And you won't want to miss her chats with some of the most interesting and influential industry voices. And now, please take your seat at the table as Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates starts now, exclusively on AM 970, The Answer.
Welcome to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates. This show is produced in association with my dear friend, Lucas A. Ferrara. There are certain things in life we think we understand. Fine dining, we understand that. Michelin stars, we think we understand those too. And beer, well, beer feels familiar, casual, approachable, something we've all experienced in its simplest form. But what happens when you take something we think we know and elevate it to a place we've never imagined? Because tonight's conversation lives exactly in that space. It lives at the intersection of craftsmanship and curiosity, of tradition and reinvention, of something as humble as beer and something as prestigious as a Michelin star. And that's not a pairing most people would ever expect. For decades, the Michelin Guide has been synonymous with white tablecloths, intricate tasting menus, and the kinds of culinary precision that borders on obsession. It's a world built on refinement, on detail, on the relentless pursuit of perfection. Beer, on the other hand, has always lived in a different lane. It's social, it's communal, it's often overlooked in the fine dining conversation, sitting quietly next to wine lists that get all of the attention. But what if beer didn't have to sit on the sidelines anymore? What if beer could lead the conversation? That's precisely what one visionary decided to explore. Because tonight's guest didn't just challenge expectations, he completely redefined them. I'm joined this evening by Jared Rouben, culinary brewmaster at Moody Tongue, the only Michelin-Starred brewery in the whole entire world. Jared, along with his business partner Jeremy, asked a simple but radical question. What if beer could be treated with the same level of respect, intention, and artistry as the world's greatest cuisines? And not only did he ask that question, he built an entire philosophy around it. A philosophy rooted in balance, in flavor, in pairing, in elevating every single element of the dining experience. Not just what's on the plate, but what's in the glass. And that philosophy led to something unprecedented. Because for the first time in history, a brewery earned a Michelin star. Not a restaurant that happens to serve great beer. Not a chef dabbling in brewing, but a true brewery where beer's the centerpiece, recognized at the highest level of culinary excellence. And that changes everything. It challenges how we think about luxury. It challenges how we define craftsmanship. And maybe most importantly, it challenges how we experience flavor. Because suddenly, beer isn't just something you drink. It's something you taste. It's something you pair. It's something you think about. And that shift from casual to considered is where tonight's conversation really begins. Because behind that Michelin star is a story. A story of discipline, of creativity, of refusing to accept that things have to stay the way they've always been. It's the story of someone who understood that innovation in hospitality doesn't always mean creating something entirely new. Sometimes it means looking at something familiar and seeing its potential in a completely different way. And that's what makes tonight's guest so compelling. He's not just a brewer. He's a culinary mind, a storyteller through flavor, if you will. Someone who has blurred the lines between kitchen and brewery in a way that feels both revolutionary and somehow inevitable. Because once you experience it, it makes perfect sense. So tonight we're going to explore that journey. We're going to talk about what it really takes to earn a Michelin star in a space where no one thought it was possible. We're going to talk about the evolution of beer from something we casually enjoy to something we deeply appreciate. And we're going to dive into that mindset behind it all, because that's where the real magic lives. At the end of the day, this isn't just a story about beer. It's a story about possibility. It's about what happens when you take something ordinary and treat it as extraordinary. And what unfolds when you refuse to stay in your lane. So with that, let's get started. Jared, welcome to the show. I'm delighted that the stars aligned and you were able to come in studio tonight. First of all, well done. You have the only Michelin-Starred brewery in the world, located in Chicago. You're a part of culinary history, and that is absolutely extraordinary and something to be really proud of. But before we get going here, I'd like to just welcome you nicely.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. Yeah, this is wonderful. Let's chat.
Let's chat. Well, chat we will. Let's talk about beyond the brewery part, which is remarkable. But you do have a lot of different concepts surrounded, like Moody Tongue. You're in New York, Palm Beach.
We do, yeah. So we have we started in Chicago. We started as a brewery, a culinary-focused brewery. My background, classically trained chef up here in New York at the Culinary Institute of America.
Ooh, CIA.
Yeah, CIA. It was there. I really fell in love with beer. I mean, I liked beer before, but at CIA, I started a beer club, the CIA Brew Club. And it was there that I, started not only using beer as a pairing ingredient, but we're also using beer within our recipes as well. And for me, that was kind of like an aha moment to look at beer just beyond the glass and think of it as an ingredient. And it kind of sparked a passion, or at least a curiosity. I mean,
you're a pioneer.
Well, beer's already great. So, it was more of like, how do we explore these different styles from all over the world? Right. And at the time, if everyone threw in $5, you and your culinary buddies, you could taste beers from Germany and England and Belgium. And I think just all the flavors and aromatics that translated to a lot of the cooking and culinary flavors, it really kind of inspired me to kind of bring these two worlds together, beer and food.
Is the Brew Club still there at the CIA?
It was as of last year.
Wow.
So unless there's a strong disinterest in beer for culinary students, which I imagine will never happen, it still exists today.
That's so cool. All right, Moody Tongue, the name. I have to know, how did you come up with that?
Moody Tongue, it just means someone with a discerning palate, someone who cares about what they consume. And that became a standard of excellence. No one ever goes into a restaurant and asks, for the most average burger with the most average beer. They want excellence. And I think for us that we kind of strive towards that excellence. And through the name Moody Tongue, we built a level of trust with our guests, knowing that we will use the best ingredients, handle it with care, and then make sure we celebrate whatever ingredient we weave into our beer. So, yeah, I think it's a fun name. It's something that we can all relate to. And the tongue is the ultimate judge, right? That's how we guides us in our culinary decisions.
I know we're just early in the show here, but I originally reached out to your business partner, Jeremy, for Moody Tongue to come on, and he was like, I'm just going to show you Jared because I think he would be better suited for this, and I can see why.
I appreciate you saying, look, Jeremy, best friend and business partner. At Moody Tongue, we have really defined roles. Jeremy's a great partner for me because he likes numbers as much as I like beer. And if you're building, a brewing business, a restaurant brewing business, that's the kind of partner you want to have.
Oh, okay. You know what? Maybe we'll talk about that more in the
Absolutely.
later part of the show, because I'm sure there is a whole business side of this that I really don't know. We haven't had a lot of beer on the show yet. We've only had Guinness on. So
it's a great brewery. Great beer.
Yeah. Colin O'Connor. Shout out to him in Dublin. You didn't just start in beer, right? You started in kitchens, big kitchens, like at the French Laundry with Thomas Keller. Like, what pulled you into that world?
For me, as a culinary student, I admired these Michelin-Starred restaurants. They were almost kind of like untouchable, right? Like you read about them in class, you heard about some of your classmates, trying to stage at them, and Chef Keller was at the apex, and I still believe is at the apex of food, beverage, service, and education. And my whole goal is try to work for the best and try to learn as much as possible, and then start your own path. And so, working with Chef Keller at Per Se, working at the Martini House in Napa has really shaped our brewing philosophy. And let me be a little bit more specific. What they do so well at the Thomas Keller Restaurant Group is pride themselves on sourcing the best ingredient, but also finding that great ingredient and then being able to handle it in a way that whether it's your farmer or artisanal producer would really be proud of. And so I've kind of taken that same philosophy and just apply it to beer.
Oh, my gosh. I love this conversation, Jared.
I'm
so glad you're here. I really am.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Was there a moment where you realized beer could be elevated to a culinary level? And why beer and not spirits or wine?
I don't think you need to discriminate. I love wine, I love spirits, and I love beer. For me, I saw a big opportunity once again back at CIA where, the education was really focused on wines and wines that were at a really, high price point. You were talking about Burgundies and Bordeauxs and Champagnes. But as a culinary student, that wasn't feasible at the time. And so what was far more financially approachable was beer and access to fantastic beers from all over the world without stamping your passport. And so the more I dug deeper and learned more about beer, the more I saw similarities within a lot of the dishes we were asked to create. And it took a step, or actually a page from the wine world, which is origin in thinking that what grows together goes together. And let me be more specific. So you're having, French food with French wine. You're having German food with German beer. So a lot of the same philosophy with these great pairings, but more focused on beer. And let me get back to your other question, is where is beer's place in fine dining and why beer? I think for the same reason we love champagne is that there's bubbles. And those bubbles, that carbonic acid, that it scrubs the tongue so that every bite is a fresh bite. And chef always wants you to have a fresh bite, especially when you're doing a tasting menu. And the way I kind of helped, or myself and then the people that work with me, acclimate beer in a space which is usually reserved for wine is glassware and presentation. So I took that same beautiful glassware that's usually reserved for Champagne, Burgundy, and Bordeaux, and I put beer in it. And so people looked at the beer differently. They cared for it differently. They smelled it. They swirled it. And it became less about, am I a beer drinker or a wine drinker, and more about, am I someone who's passionate about flavor, taste, and aromatic? And I think that's really helped Moody Tongue. And I think it's one of the reasons our guests really enjoy coming into our restaurants.
So let me ask, why Chicago? Because you could have did that anywhere, right? You could do that in New York. That'd be interesting in New York, even on the West Coast. But you did Chicago. You opened there.
Well, Chicago, as of until I think last year, had the oldest brewing school in the country. It had been around since before Prohibition. They just moved to Canada. And they had this great dual degree program in Munich, Germany. So I moved from New York to Chicago to go to brewing school. And you had all these great educators and really a lot of brewing students that were moving and living in Chicago. And Chicago has such a rich tradition and history for beer. You have the Germans, the Polish, the Irish, Eastern Europeans, and they brought not only beer recipes, but their passion for beer. And so it felt like real home court advantage for people that loved beer and loved food.
Oh, my goodness. I think I just told you off air. I did just go to Chicago recently, and I haven't been there in a long time, and I was blown away by the culinary scene there.
It's fantastic, and everyone's so nice. It's like you can have great food and really nice people, serving you and introducing you to other restaurants, and then probably having a 5-minute conversation about their 5 favorite restaurants, and then you'll probably end up being invited to someone's house.
I love that.
So yeah, it's that Midwest mentality, which I think is very much a part of hospitality.
Yes, totally. Okay, can we talk a little bit about that brewing school you went to?
Sure.
How long was that program for?
It's actually quite short. I think it was around 6 months, and you spent a quarter of your time in Germany and the rest of your time in Chicago. And it was, it's actually great. Like when it used to be, the school when I went there, it was in Goose Island, which was one of the few breweries at the time. You can even imagine that in Chicago. Now there's obviously quite a few. And then the school moved into a culinary school. And that was kind of and I helped make that happen. I introduced the dean of the culinary school to the dean of the brewing school. And what a match made in heaven, right? Like you've got brewing students surrounded by culinary students, people learning how to cook and people learning how to brew, all under the same roof.
Wow. You really are a mover and a shaker and an innovator.
You know what? I have a lot of help. And like I said earlier in the show, there's a lot of people that have inspired me who've really helped me kind of in my path.
All right. Well, then where did Jeremy come into the mix with this?
Yeah. So Jeremy was in New York. He was working for Vornado doing real estate finance. And We are first cousins.
Oh, okay.
I mentioned we were cousins. We're first cousins. Our moms are sisters. For every Thanksgiving, his family comes and visits my family in Louisville, Kentucky. My responsibility was to bring home kegs of beer.
Okay.
Yeah, not a bad job.
No.
And after a night of, exploring all the kegs that I brought home, I was telling him, I really want to build a brewery, and I think I'm ready to contribute to the beer community. But I was having trouble putting together a solid business plan. I put together a business plan, but I knew it could be far better, and it wasn't my strength. And he's sitting there, and we're having some beers, and he's like, well, why don't you just send me what you have and any other information you think is important? So I sent it his way. A week later, I had the most beautiful business plan put in front of me, and then he started giving me to-dos with goals and deadlines. And that structure was really helpful for me. And next thing you know, he's like, look, I'm going to fly out to Chicago. I was hosting a beer festival called Belgian Fest. He just sat there and listened to what people had to say about the beer, and, of course, had a few himself. And he's like, I think this is a viable business. This is interesting. Let's see what we can do with it. And we've been off to the races since then. And I think what I really enjoy about our relationship and at Moody Tongue is the defined roles. He gets to do what he's very good at and what he's passionate about, and I get to do what I'm good at and what I'm passionate about, and that's a luxury in business. But it's one that we have, and it's one of the reasons why our partnership and Moody Tongue works so well.
How did you begin bridging the gap between brewing and cuisine in a way that felt intentional, like not gimmicky?
I think I took the same approach that was being taught to me in the kitchen. It's how do we source great ingredients? Where do we source it? And how do we develop those relationships with people that are creating those great ingredients? And then taking that, and I'll speak to beer, I think beer all starts with a great base style, right? You have to make a great Pilsner in order to make a great truffle Pilsner. Mm. And so I first focused on the foundations of brewing and then used my culinary background to add additional layers of flavor and aromatics. And so I started, brewer's mentality first, and then, put on a chef's hat to add those additional layers.
Okay, the name Moody Tongue, did you trademark that?
I don't know. We have to ask Jeremy. We probably
Or
should
like culinary brewmaster.
Yeah, no, we probably
genius.
should. Yeah, that's more Jeremy's realm.
We're giving Jeremy a to-do list finally.
Yeah, well, no, he's got plenty on his plate. But that being said, this came natural. It was the next step. Like I knew I was passionate about cooking. I saw an opportunity with beer. When I would go out to these restaurants, or I didn't get the opportunity to go out to all of them, when I'd look at their menu, I said that there's a lot missing. These wine lists are exceptional, the coffee and tea list, the food menu, but beer usually have the same 5 characters.
Right.
And for me, like these restaurants, these Michelin restaurants with such great attention to detail, it felt like, beer wasn't a focal point, and yet, people are still ordering it. So that kind of lit a fire under me to say, hey, let's give people options. If they decide to order these beers, great. If not, like that's telling in itself. But we should at least build a beer list similar, not in size, but in quality, as the wine list.
What are some of the beers that you offer at Moody Tongue? Like, what are their styles?
We have this really great yuzu lager that celebrates like yuzu, so you get like hints of like lime and grapefruit. It's really refreshing. It works really well with sushi. That's any sort of
clearly your favorite.
Yeah, no, I mean, right. I was just drinking it last night. That's why it's like on the tip of my tongue. We have an aperitif Pilsner, which is a classic German-style Pilsner. And for me, I studied over in Germany, and I fell in love with the structure of their brewing. It's very specific, meticulous. You don't color outside the lines. But if you can make a great Pilsner, I think you can make a great anything. I feel like it's the consommé of brewing. And so I always feel like that's such a good test when you go to a brewery. Start with the Pilsner. The Pilsner's good. Everything else should be great.
Goodness gracious. I feel so undeserving to be having this conversation with you because I don't drink beer. And once a year, I'll drink a Miller High Life, the champagne of beers, out of a champagne flute to feel a little extra fancy.
I love it. And look, just because you haven't had our beers yet.
I think that's what it is. And when I get back to Chicago, or, I know you have the other concepts in New York, Moody Tongue Pizza, Moody Tongue Sushi. I'm going to get there, I swear. And I'm going to bring Pagano. We're going to try it. All right, we're just getting started. But when we come back, we're going to talk about the moment everything shifted, when beer stopped being an afterthought in fine dining and became the main event. Their beer industry is valued at over $700 billion. So we still have a lot to discuss tonight. Stay with us. You're listening to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970 The Answer.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 55 East 59th Street, New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate, on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
Welcome back to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970 The Answer.
Welcome back to the show. Tonight we're talking about breaking boundaries, because what Jared Rouben has done with Moody Tongue doesn't just challenge expectations, it changes the conversation entirely. Because earning a Michelin star is one thing. Earning it at a brewery, that's something else entirely. Moody Tongue is headquartered in Chicago's South Loop, where its flagship brewery and dining destination houses both a vibrant bar and the world's first Michelin-Starred brewery dining room. Founded by Jared Rouben, Moody Tongue pioneered culinary brewing, approaching the beer with the same precision and pairing philosophy as fine dining and wine service. The brand has since expanded with concepts in New York City, West Palm Beach, including Moody Tongue Sushi and Moody Tongue Pizza, each blending elevated hospitality, chef-driven cuisine, and sophisticated beer pairings that continue to redefine luxury beer culture. Jared, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
All right, explain to the audience what Moody Tongue actually is, right? Brewery plus dining experience.
That's right. So we are a brewery. We create all of our beers, and in Chicago, right on top of the brewery, we have two different restaurants. The dining room, Moody Tongue, which will do a 13-course beer and food pairing experience where every single course is paired with a different beer in a different piece of glassware. And then right down the hall, you've got the bar at Moody Tongue, a little bit more casual. Think like chops, steak, whole fish, handmade pasta, oysters, a la carte, choose your own adventure. And then in New York, we have Moody Tongue Sushi. So think super delicious sushi with delicious beers and wines and cocktails. Right connected to it, you have the hand roll and martini bar, which tastes just as good as it sounds, because everyone deserves a martini or two with hand rolls.
Absolutely.
And then down in Florida, we have Moody Tongue Sushi in West Palm Beach. So who are we? We are a brewery that loves food. We are a restaurant group, and what we do best is pair beer and food together.
When did you open?
2014.
2014. Wow, so you've been around for a hot minute.
We have.
How did you navigate through COVID during those difficult times?
Yeah, no, those were dark times for everybody.
Yes.
Gulp. We did the best we can, I think it was about trying to take care of ourselves, each other, and run a business. And I think, all you can do is truly the best you can and survive another day. And so I think we're really fortunate to be here. And it makes you tough, right? Like going through something like that. I know that was difficult for everybody, regardless of what industry you're in. I can only speak to our own industry. But we are grateful that we're here and grateful that we're still doing what we love doing.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, when you first opened, did you set out with a Michelin star in mind, or did that evolve over time?
No, we set that out in mind. That was always my goal. I didn't know how we were going to get there, but 100% that was the mission behind Moody Tongue. And we said that from day zero. Of course, we didn't advertise that. We more of a head-down focus, like this is how we think we can get there. Attention to detail, being meticulous, creating great food, great beverage, great service, and do it every single day, like no off days, right? And everyone gets treated like a Michelin inspector. I think that philosophy is really important to me because everyone deserves to be treated like a Michelin inspector. Everyone is a VIP. And so I think that helped us in our journey. And we were blessed. Our name was called, and
I want to hear about that when you first heard. Like, did you cry? Did you scream? Did you yell? What was the reaction like?
That was a great time. That was a really, really great memory. They're pretty vague. You get a generic email. Things have changed how they do the Michelin announcement. But at the time, we got a very generic email. And I think it was just more of like, Michelin is doing some like advertising. Please submit some photos. There was, no return email address. Like, you couldn't really reach out. There's no number. And then they had said, Michelin, they'd like to chat with certain restaurants about seasonality, something like along those lines. So we were like, oh, cool. That sounds great. And then we got like the phone call. And you're just like, I don't know if they still do phone calls. But we got a phone call and you're just like jaw on the floor, just a rush of just, I don't know, endorphins and really pure happiness.
Oh, like the hard work is finally paying off.
It's wonderful to be recognized, in something that you're passionate about. You set a goal, you go after it, you do the best you can, and you hope you get there. And we were fortunate to get there. And I think we just all took a moment and sat down, which is really, it's just, I don't think anyone spoke a word. You just kind of sat down and exhaled. And, then the mentality is like, okay, now, tomorrow's a new day. We start all over. I think there's something pretty great about that. You can relax for one day, and then the next day it's like, let's do it all over again, 150, clean slate. And that's the expectation for any guest that walks in. They're going to get that regardless of the accolade. The next day, you uphold the accolade.
Right.
And,
it's funny.
Special.
I had on the show last year, it was last February, Chef Nadav Greenberg, who is the executive chef and partner at Oresh, one of Eugene Rem's newest restaurants in New York. But he was at Shimone, where he earned them their first Michelin star. And he kind of answered the same way. He's like, it's overwhelming, the joy that you feel when you receive the star, but then you go in the next day and you're like, it's back to business, right? So do you feel pressure to uphold this Michelin star, or does it just feel very validating that you were able to achieve it?
It's funny, their beverage manager, Jonathan, was in our restaurant last night.
You're kidding?
I met him. He was very nice. I think you sign up for, I don't know if I would use the word pressure. I mean, it's there. I'm not saying it's not. I think it's kind of what you sign up for. So it's like every day, it's attention to detail, A+, again and again and again. I think people are drawn to it. I think there's a little bit of a rush to it, right? Like, this is what you work so hard to achieve and to be recognized. The expectation is not what you did the day before, but now you actually have to be better. And I think there's something exciting about that. It kind of pushes you to be creative, and I think that's fun. I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy this industry so much.
Absolutely. What do you think is harder, perfecting the dish or perfecting a beer?
I don't know. I think they're kind of the same.
Yeah?
Yeah, the mediums are different. One's a solid, one's a liquid. One takes a lot longer to make. Brewing's a lot similar to baking, right? Like, you put it in the oven. There's nothing you can really do to fix it. There's no butter, cream, or it's going to get you out of trouble.
There's no adjusting it.
No. And for us, the quantities are pretty big, so pretty much little room for error. I think that's a lot of the differences between, cooking and brewing. Ultimately, you get to make both parties happy. As brewers, you get to intoxicate people. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I think chefs would be pretty interested in that. So there's a lot of similarities. I think brewing just takes longer.
You know what I'm thinking in my head as you're saying this? In every restaurant across the world, there's like a staff beer. There's a staff drink, right, that you get to have at the end of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get through the shift, you get a little perk. your employees are drinking Moody Tongue beer.
Yeah.
You know, in New York, they're getting Pabst Blue Ribbon. Very different.
You know, I think our team members, they have options. If they want to have a Pilsner, they'll have a Pilsner. If they want to have Cassis, which is like a lambic-style beer that showcases black currant, it's similar to the flavors and aromatics of Bordeaux, guess what? They can have that too. So I think options are important. I mentioned that early on in the show. And, you know, sometimes I think they'll have a yuzu lager and sometimes they'll have a rice lager. And if, you know what, it's a rough shift, then maybe they'll have the bourbon barrel-aged 12-layer cake imperial stout at around 13.2% alcohol. And hopefully that wipes the slate clean for the next day.
Hopefully. So are you creating the dishes first and then the beer around them? Or the beer first and the dishes around the beer?
Well, I like to work around the dishes. But our cheat sheet is, you know, we put together a beer calendar. So at the beginning of the year, you know, everyone knows the beers that are going to come out for the specific months. And so chef is able to look at the calendar in advance. And for me, you know, we're a seasonal restaurant. So I know that at the beginning of the season, I'm going to see ramps, then I'll see rhubarb, and we'll slowly get into like berries. So I'm also thinking about what chef is going to put on the plate, even though those dishes aren't finalized yet.
Right.
We change the menu quite a bit. So it's usually me working around the food, which I think is really exciting and fun. It keeps me on my toes.
I have to say, I mean, I'm sitting across from you doing the show tonight, and you've been smiling subtly the whole time you've been speaking, and that's how you know you really just love what you're doing, and I love seeing that.
Thank you. I love it. I love this. I feel really lucky. I get to do what I love, and I'm surrounded by super talented people that make everything we do look better. And so I feel like I'm just on like a really good team, and sometimes they get to watch and sometimes they get to participate. But, you know, ultimately I'm proud of like what we put out there. But yeah, I'm smiling. I love it. You know, it's a luxury to really enjoy what you do.
Absolutely. So. Life is good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to get into the mindset behind it all, what it really takes to innovate at that level, and where beer and hospitality is headed next. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970 The Answer.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 55 East 59th Street, New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
Welcome back to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970, The Answer.
And we're back with Jared Rouben of Moody Tongue, the brewery that completely changed the conversation around what beer can be. You know, Jared, one of the things I keep thinking about during this conversation is how rare it is to find true craftsmanship that still feels soulful. Moody Tongue isn't just producing beer, it's creating an experience. From Michelin-Starred tasting menus to the precision behind every pour, you've elevated brewing into something that belongs in the same conversation as fine wine, haute cuisine, and luxury hospitality. And in this final segment, I really want to explore the philosophy behind all of it, the creativity, the discipline, the future of beer culture, and why people are craving experiences that feel more intentional, more thoughtful, and honestly, more memorable. So let's get into the artistry, the innovation, and the future of culinary brewing with Jared Rouben. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, if we can just start. I know you just partnered with PST, right? What is that? What's going on with that? Tell me all about that.
Yeah, PST, Pizza Studio Tamaki. It's a pizzeria that showcases Tokyo Neapolitan pizza. under the helm of Pizza Tsubasa Tamaki. Tokyo Neapolitan pizza, it's absolutely fantastic. So I think a lot of our listeners will be familiar with Neapolitan. It's light, it's airy. What Chef Tamaki does so well is he makes this pizza, it's almost even lighter. And he does this by using his flour blend, his 30-hour fermentation, which is a great similarity to what we do in brewing. And as a result, not only is the pizza lighter, but it reduces the amount of gluten. You're more comfortable in your tummy. And what I really love is the salt punch. So what he does is he takes his Okinawa salt and he actually seasons the oven before you put down the dough. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is you get this salt crust on the bottom and also within your crust so that every bite is like a pow of flavor and umami.
Oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. Where is this located?
123 St. Mark's.
Oh, great area.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. And so we've got Moody Tongue beers over there and Tokyo Neapolitan pizza. Pizza and beer is a fantastic pairing, always has been. This is just really fun because I think his pizza is incredible.
All right, what beer are we serving there?
We have some Japanese citrus lagers. So think Sudachi lager. And Sudachi is this citrus fruit that showcases lime and white pepper. We also have a Dai Pilsner. A Dai is a Japanese ingredient that showcases flavor and aromatics of bitter orange. I mentioned the Yuzu lager earlier, also fantastic. And then your traditional rice lager. There's 12 beers on draft. They all work really well with the pizza. It's a fun place. You should check it out.
Okay, I guess that's an invitation from Jared Rouben. I'm going to go check it out. I actually have someone that I'm going to send there also.
Great.
His social media handle is Tokyo Manhattan.
Okay.
And he finds all these great sushi places all over the world, and he's really invested in the chef and the process, the technique. And literally, when we're done with the show tonight, I'm going to message him and tell him to check it out.
Please do.
He's going to think I'm so cool to have be boots on the ground with the new latest and greatest.
I love it.
Okay. Do you think the future of dining includes more integration between kitchen and bar?
What do you mean by kitchen and bar? You mean
okay, you're the culinary brewmaster, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have your hands on both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're being more compatible, whereas before they were kind of just separate entities under the same roof.
I think what's worked for us breaking down the wall between the brewery and the kitchen is the fact that our chefs love beer. And I know that's not an anomaly, everybody who's listening. Everyone's like, yeah, duh, so tell me something new. But I got to tell you, it's a luxury, and I think what makes our place special to me is that we're not only creating food in-house, we're also creating beer in-house. So there is a strong level of familiarity between the beer styles because the people that are creating it are talking to the culinary folks that are creating the cuisine as well, and they're tasting them out, not just with the finished product, but throughout fermentation. So I think there's a strong level of understanding when two creators that are bringing together their food and beer work that close. And the other side of the coin is that brewers love to eat. So we've got a whole barter system going on at Moody Tongue. There's food being shared with the brewers, and there's beer being shared with the chefs. And
it's very reciprocal.
Yeah, and I think that works for our industry. I think the barter system's the best system in the culinary industry.
Do you have any advice for entrepreneurs in the hospitality industry? It doesn't have to be beverage related specifically, but someone who's sitting here maybe listening, who has an idea, has a passion for something on how to execute it successfully. Get a Jeremy behind you?
Ask for as much help. Yes. Ask for as much help as possible. I always try to kick myself and say, ask for help. Ask for help because people have done this before. And I think more often than not, people are excited to help because you're showing interest in something that, that they have done, that they've worked hard to do. And the fact that you appreciate their craft, I think makes people more willing to help you achieve your craft. So, email, text, DM, any way you can get in touch with someone that you admire or think that could help you on your path. That would be my friendly advice.
I love it. And what does success look like for you now after you've already achieved the Michelin star, right? You achieved the thing you set out to do.
First thing that popped in my head is my wife being happy. You know what I mean? That was the very first thing.
Jared.
That's a lot of success. And then I think balance, right?
Balance. Totally.
Balance at home with balance at work. I love both. very much. And just continuing to be a good husband, be a good dad, being a good businessman, being a good business partner, being a good educator, trying to wear all those hats and do it well. I think for me, that's success, and that's something that I'll continue to strive to be better at. And I don't know if that ever changes.
How do you do balance in this industry, especially at your level? Because that is the hardest thing about the hospitality industry, is finding that balance, because it's such a person-focused industry and you have to be there to make it successful.
I don't know if I have the answer. I think the first thing that popped into my head was just try to be present to the best of your abilities, which I know it's a big challenge. It certainly is for me, but try to be present and do the best you can.
All right. When people think of Moody Tongue 10 years from now, what do you want them to say?
I had a delicious meal, and I didn't like beer before, but I do now.
Oh, that's very interesting for me. Like, now I'm dying to go.
Well, you're welcome and you're invited.
Oh my gosh, I have to try this. But your beers that are, say, at, in Chicago at the brewery, your beers that are with this new pizza partnership at the sushi place, they're all different beers, right? Like, you're not going to get something at one that you can get at the other, or can you?
There is some overlap, but each one of our locations usually has quite a few beers that you can only get there. The thing is, when I really fall in love with a beer, I want to share it with everyone. So I do. But a lot of our beers we make in small quantities. So, when it is specific to location, it's probably because I don't have a lot of it.
Now, do you ever think you'll get to the point where you are going to, I don't want to say mass produce the beer, but like that you'll sell it in a liquor store?
We bottle our beers, so we are in off-premise locations. That's something we do. It's not all of our beers. The ones where the ingredients are a little bit more rare, we have smaller quantity. I like to keep that on draft. I just have a little bit more control with how it's being stored and how it's being served. But you can find our beers in bottle shops as well.
I like that. All right, and what's next for Moody Tongue? Come on, give me the tea here. We have the pizza partnership well underway. Mm-hmm. What's in that mind of yours?
I think it's just creating more restaurants that bring beer and food together.
I think you got to go to Japan.
We do. You know what? Jeremy, if you're listening, we have to go to Japan.
That would be really incredible. The balance might be hard to achieve once you go there, but you got to go international with this.
This is one of many good ideas you brought up today.
Will you name a beer after me?
Yes.
It has to be like Miller High Life, okay? Something a little effervescent and fizzy.
I'll do my best.
All right. And that brings us to our ingredient of the week. And the ingredient of the week this week is koji, which is the perfect ingredient because it sits at this intersection of culinary artistry, fermentation, science, patience, and flavor development. Exactly what Moody Tongue represents. Now, koji is a cultivated rice inoculated with a fermentation mold, and it's responsible for some of the most complex and beloved flavors in the world. Soy sauce, miso, sake, and even certain styles of umami-rich fermentation. In many ways, it's the invisible backbone of Japanese culinary craftsmanship, and Jared's entire philosophy of brewing like a chef mirrors that same intentionality. The greatest flavors are often built quietly, slowly, and intentionally behind the scenes, which is exactly what Moody Tongue does with beer. Okay, beer brewing and koji both rely on fermentation, temperature control, timing, layered flavor development, precision, and patience. If hops are the loud frontman of beer, koji is the quiet genius in the background, transforming flavor at a molecular level. Some ways I like to use koji are marinating steak or short ribs. That sounds delicious, right? Or some chicken because it helps give it a crispy skin with that deep, intense flavor while keeping the moisture very incredible. You can also make a koji butter. If you blend softened butter with just a touch of shio koji, you can put that on some grilled bread, some corn, like sear it with seafood, some vegetables, delicious. But you can also do koji chocolate chip cookies. Okay, just a little bit, a tiny amount, deepens brown butter notes, caramel flavor, and the complexity. Good pastry chefs love to use this.
And Christine, if I can interject here for just a second.
As you do. Go ahead, Ryan. I love your opinion, your PAG's perspective, if you will.
Yeah, the PAG's perspective take of the week on Culinary Confidential, if you will. But very interesting ingredient of the week choice with koji because it turns out you can actually use it in beer. And this ties in so perfectly to tonight's episode with Jared Rouben because you could use it in beer to create a wonderful flavor there.
Yeah, because it's like it enhances the flavor and things. So I could see that for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It enhances the flavor.
They probably use it in their beer for all I know.
Oh, yeah. And look, I would
right.
definitely be down to try a koji beer.
Well, one of these days you will. All right, let me talk a little bit about some beer stats, because I said earlier in the show that the beer industry is valued at over $700 billion. And it's very true. It contributes hundreds of billions of dollars annually to the U.S. economy through brewing, hospitality, distribution, agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing. There are now more than 9,000 breweries in the United States compared to fewer than 100 in the late 1970s. So that's a massive cultural shift driven by craft brewing and consumer demand for storytelling and craftsmanship. Craft beer now represents one of the most influential sectors in hospitality because consumers increasingly want local identity, small batch production, authenticity, culinary experiences, and premium pairings. Beer drinkers today are spending more on quality over quantity, which is exactly where Moody Tongue positioned itself, elevating beer into the fine dining conversation. Beer tourism has become a major hospitality driver. Destination breweries now function as event venues, restaurants, culinary destinations, and lifestyle brands. And Chicago has become one of the most respected beer cities in America, making Moody Tongue's Michelin distinction even more culturally significant. Moody Tongue became globally recognized because it challenged a huge assumption that beer could never occupy the same luxury or culinary space as wine or champagne. What chefs did for food over the last 20 years, brewers like Jared Rouben are now doing for beer. Thank you for listening to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates, Sunday nights at 9 p.m. on AM 970 The Answer. Jared, this has been such a thoughtful conversation. What you've built isn't just impressive, it's transformative. You've taken something so familiar and completely redefined how we experience it. Thank you so much for joining me in studio tonight. And next week on Culinary Confidential, we shift from precision in the glass to escape and experience. I'll be joined by Lucy Swift Lemonides, owner of a room at the beach in Bridgehampton, a boutique luxury property that redefines what it means to get away. We're talking about summer travel, elevated hospitality, and why boutique stays are shaping the future of how and where we unwind. You won't want to miss it. But that is the show for tonight. Thanks for listening and have a great night.
The preceding program is sponsored by Shake It Off Live, LLC.
Life is a song. And what if your faith could help you hit the high notes? Grammy-nominated and Dove Award-winning artist Torrin Wells invites you into The High Note.
It's The High Note.
A podcast about real life, real struggles, and a real God who meets you right where you are. With honesty, insight, and encouragement, Torrin tackles the issues you're facing every day and helps you rise above the noise. If you're ready for a fresh perspective on your faith, tune in to The High Note podcast with Torrin Wells.
Welcome to The High Note.
Available now wherever you get your podcasts.